Hey, everybody. Already a question. Oh my gosh, so quickly. Let's see. Hey, Quirky. Okay, guys, Quirky. All right. How do I set it up to run in Visual Studio Code? Oh, so I would do this. I would go to MonoGame.net and I would hit the Learn button. I can show you this as I go here. Share my screen real quick. So yeah, I would go to monogame.net. That's our main website. Then you just hit the Learn button. And when you come in here, you should be able to go down to Documentation Hub and then Getting Started. And there's using Visual Studio Code. You see that? Hang on, let me zoom in. That's better. Using Visual Studio Code. That's where you figure this stuff out. It does bring up a good point that, our getting started is kind of buried in the, not buried, but it's in the documents. And, this main thing does not have you, it doesn't start with like, hey, this is how you, here's how to get started. And I think like even, so there's this, yeah, get started brings you to docs, and it doesn't really, we probably should have a getting started up here so that people know like this is how you get started with stuff. I mean, you could go into this and it kind of gets you started with stuff, but Documentation Hub, getting started, Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio, or using Writer, any of those are valid ways to get started. And it'll tell you here for Windows, navigate here, here's what to download. It's all well written and everything. Merry Christmas to everybody. Let's see. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Let's see. Back to what we were doing. So last time we were working on the Save API. We're going to keep working on that this time. I wanted to make some more progress on that and see if we can get it to a point that it's something committable. Let's see. There is Discord again, popping up when I don't want it to. The only way to solve that is to just kill it. Goodbye, Discord. All right. So where we had left it was that we had basically taken what Dom had originally set up, his PR, and we started to evolve it a little bit and trying to kind of unify it so that we had one path that works for all our platforms. That's mostly through trying to get some commonality out of it. And there was some there, and he already had kind of a path there, but it was hard to follow. And I think it was a little mixed because he started from a completely different path. And I think we need to kind of step back and rework it a bit. So let's jump into code. So back into code. So that's interesting. Why is that still showing? Oh, I must have shared the app and not the screen. Let's share the window, the entire screen. There we go. Screen 2. No, screen 1. There we go. There we go. Much better. So yeah. So what we want to do here is we had this storage container class. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger to make it a little easier for people. And it's the one that does the main work. We had an unsafe pointer to the native code to do whatever the native code needs to do. And this is really like, you can think of the native code as kind of like the low-level API that does the platform-specific work. We want to keep non-platform-specific work in C# so that it is as flexible as possible. And let's see what else we have here. All right. So before we get names, yeah, I think we had most of this implemented. The problem that we had was when we ran the unit test, it would fail, and it was mostly because there was duplicated work here. Like this, and if I run it from the unit test, if I can find it, load tests. Come on, tests. There we go. I'm using the VK one to do tests, but we'll use it anyways. Framework. I think there was storage device tests. Yes. If I just run those, they're all going to fail, or a lot of them are going to fail. Yeah, there's things like this that, like, storage path just cannot exist. It's just not something that can exist because we can't guarantee that there's a path that is, there's no guarantee that there can be a path that's going to work in all cases. It assumes that everything's just a path and you just write to this path and it works. And that's not necessarily true. And I don't think that we want an API that works that way. You don't want an API that says, like, here's a file path, write whatever you like. Here are the reasons. Like, one, that path might be very specialized. On some platforms, even the paths are written in different ways. Sometimes the paths, like, you can't even access them till you make some other API call before you can actually access them. Sometimes they have limitations on how often you can read and write to them. Like, on some platforms, if you read or write to them too frequently, you can actually damage this stuff. Like, especially things that run on memory cards, like, they have limits on read and write time, how much reading and writing you can do them before they start to degrade. So they don't want you to read and write too much. Can you increase the font size in the editor? I think that was already addressed. Is that not big enough? I think it is. Looks like it's big enough, but tell me if it still isn't, because it looks like it is. So yeah, we definitely want to make sure that that we control that access because of limits on how often you can read and write. So you want to make sure that whatever API you use is very cached, like it doesn't touch the disk unless it's absolutely necessary to touch the disk. Assuming it's even a disk. Again, I'm using the disk term for storage. And you also don't want, sometimes those paths also have limitations on naming. You might not be able to use, a Unicode character for the name of a file. You can't. Sometimes they're 8.3 names. So there's some limitations that you have to live with, and because of that, you kind of have to put a little bit of a barrier between the saving system and your code, instead of just saying, here, just write stuff to this disk. It just doesn't work that simply on all platforms. We want to provide something that you can be sure is just going to work. It's easy to use when you get to PC and it does the right things there, but when you get to console, that it still works without you having to rewrite your code. And ideally, not even have to change your file formats or anything like that. So that's the reason why it has to have this abstraction. So let's look at some of these that are failing. So actually, we're just talking about this storage path. That just can't exist. So this test needs to go away. I'm just going to comment it out for now. Actually, I'm going to delete it because there's no path. That can't be there. It makes the assumption that a file path is reasonable, and it isn't. Could we leave it there for only certain platforms? Maybe, but I don't think that there's a real good reason to need that path. At least not I don't think there's a real good reason to need that path. So this one fails. Let's see. One player needs knowledge. Let's run it again and see what it does. Didn't like creating a container. So let's just debug it real quick. See what we get there. Okay, it fails on the very first thing. So that's what we need to know. Question is, why did that fail? Oh, because it just created a, well, no, it didn't create a storage container. Oh, is it, might be calling, do we have a static initializer in here somewhere? I thought we had a static initializer in here somewhere that did something. Could be that thing. Sometimes it's not very good at telling you what went wrong. Oh, wait, was that the right one? Yeah. Yeah, this is what failed. I was trying to call that and failed because it couldn't find it. And then it shows up an error here, which is kind of weird. And the error it actually gives you is not very easy to understand at times. So it kind of sucks sometimes having to track those down. Anyways, it made sense what failed. It doesn't have that API. So we're going to have to start writing the API on the native side to take our next steps here. And if I look at our interop, and I still think that these APIs are still what we need. Yeah, storage delete container, create container, file existence, file load, directory exists. I mean, I think those are still basic APIs that we want to have. We're going to have to add some more, but I don't think that these are being removed or changed radically. So I think it's an acceptable time to make sure we have good interop. So the interop that we use now in the new MonoGame. So let's talk about that for a minute. And I'll just jump back over to full screen here. We're talking about this. So in previous versions of MonoGame, what we did was we would try to always find, like every time we'd have to add some functionality for a particular platform, what we would do is try to find some C# wrapper that would wrap some native library that would provide what we needed. So things like, for audio, we used OpenAL. There was an OpenAL C# wrapper. For OpenGL, a long time ago, we used a library called OpenTK, which was a C# OpenGL library that kind of wrapped OpenGL access for a long time. And still, we use SharpDX for DX11, DirectX 11 access in C#. So we would depend on third-party libraries to wrap the C# to wrap the native code with some C# helpers so that we can call it from C# code. And that was fine. But the problem with it is we really didn't control our own destiny. Things would potentially break. We wouldn't be able to change how the APIs work a lot of times. Things were fragile because we didn't control what the library writer for the other for this other library did. Also, a lot of times those libraries were overkill. We just needed it for this, like OpenTK, we just needed it for OpenGL access, but it also had window management and input and everything else. It was trying to be in serves everything API. And that's fine for them, but for our needs, it was kind of overkill. So a lot of times those APIs, even if they're convenient, they do too much. And sometimes they're not as efficient as we want them to be. So for that reason, we've spent a long time trying to just find wrappers. And then for a while, we made our own wrappers where we would make, we would make our own C# wrapper that would p-invoke into some native library. And that can work as well. Well, what we've decided to do moving forward is something different. Instead of trying to p-invoke C# p-invokes, which is where you can call some native code from some C# code. Instead of trying to do that, calling an API that already exists, instead what we're doing is we commit to the fact that we're going to have a C++ C native library that has a bunch of support functionality that MonoGame needs at the C# level. And instead of trying to p-invoke or expose directly these APIs, like direct APIs to DirectX 11 or direct APIs to OpenAL or Xaudio, instead of trying to do that, instead we just write our own high-level API that kind of exposes what MonoGame needs at the C# level, and then at the C++ level, we can write whatever code we need to provide that, so that we kind of simplify our APIs. And part of that is this new approach that we have here, where we write a static class, we add DLL imports for different functions that we possibly need, right? These are all these imports. We kind of went over this the other day. It has all these imports. And then you see this MG handle. That's some special magic here. So we have that. And then what we do is we have this tool. And it's kind of hard to see here, but they have this. It's not named very well. MonoGame Generator C types. Weird name, but it is what it is. What that does is when you run it, it will basically access this native library, and it'll basically look for everything that has an MG handle. It will say, hey, that's a pointer. It will look for these DLL imports automatically. When it finds these DLL imports, it will generate header files for it. So when we run this, and I think how I set it up was, I think it's already set up to run properly. If I look at the debug settings here, it's part of the automated build process, but it's not. Maybe I don't have it set up to run. Actually, I think maybe, how does that work? Does it do it automatically? No, it looks for the repo directory, output directory. How was I doing that previously? I guess I was just running it from here. Or does it? It doesn't automatically run, I don't think. Let me double check this thing. So that the header ends up going in the native folder under MonoGame. That should probably be runtime, but it is MonoGame at the moment. And then it puts it into here. API MG asset. Let's go look at MG asset real quick. I want to see how that one's being done. It's been a little while since I looked at this, so. No, I want to look at the. Yeah, so very annoying. Probably not in a folder called, it's under title container. It's got, really hate when we do this. Yeah, it's under title container interop is this MG asset thing. Interesting. I wonder why. Well, I think it works this way because just trying to remember how it ends up getting this naming convention. I think it might be because of, interesting. I wonder why it gets that naming convention. I forget how it decides that this is what the API is. You can see it generates this generated header here. The struct, like in this case, the struct, this handle here, it says, hey, that's a handle to something. So it just says, okay, it's just a struct pointer to something. It's abstract. We don't know exactly what's in that handle. And then it has these APIs, and those are the exact APIs that are in here. Open, read, see, close. That's what it's exposing. And on the native code side, I can show it to you here. I'll just show you this stuff before we get into it's in common MG asset. You can see here's the implementation of it, what it does, which is very simple for this API for basically for PC. This is the default implementation of this specifically for any platform. It just uses fopen, opens whatever path it is, has the basic APIs. The reason that we have this is because on certain platforms, there are specialized APIs for reading files that have some acceleration that it can do, and some optimization that it can do, and you can technically take advantage of that. It also is helpful for other things like mobile and stuff like that, where there's some specialized APIs for reading assets. Not that we've started doing that yet, but that's the reason why they're there. So yeah, I wonder why we don't have that there. Hey, look, somebody banned. Yay, bad chatter. All right. So back to running that generator types. I could have sworn that I had a simple way to run it before. All right, I just have to run it again. And I think how it works, if I remember correctly, we'll see. Let's see what happens if I just run it. I'm just going to run it. No, it is. It already got arguments. Oh, that's right. You don't have to call anything. It's like set up already to automatically figure this stuff out. It's crazy. So it's just going to run. Hey, it didn't like something. What did it not like? I was trying to it was trying to do pipeline stuff as well. I don't need it to do pipeline stuff for right now. I don't need to spend time debugging that. So I'm just going to just skip that for right now because I don't have time to be debugging some other nonsense. So it ran. It should have added stuff in here. See anything there? Did it modify anything? It did something. I don't think it added what I wanted to add it. It's MG asset. What I'm missing here is I forgot how it decides to add these things. Well, it might actually just be, hang on a second, I might be looking in the wrong place. Interesting. All right, well. The other way I can do this is figure out why it's failing, because I can just look at what it's doing, which is annoying, but it'll work. Let's see. It's looking for MonoGame interop namespace prefix. Is that the issue, maybe? Maybe it's not in the namespace. Man, I haven't messed with this in a while, and it's confusing as to why things are not working here. Let's see. MGA system, yes. MGA, voice. Sure. Kind of going through the different types here. It's finding. Everything begins with that API, MonoGame Interoperability. So it's kind of going through all the interop APIs. So it has to be, how this is written, it has to be in the MonoGame Interop namespace, but I don't see the asset API as part of that. I think that's just broken for those two. The platform interop specifically has this. I don't see that in here. Well, I think that's broken. Yeah, I think that's broken. So I'm going to fix that. And in here, we're going to do the same thing. Then build this guy again. Might be some issues. I hate it when it does that. Just don't like it sticking that stuff at the top. Let's build that again. Okay, so that solves that. But I think it's going to do the wrong thing when I generate the stuff. I'll let it run. See what it do. Yeah, it hasn't updated this API MG asset. Yeah, put everything into this API MG, both asset and storage container. Yeah, because of just, yeah, it depends on how it's written. It depends on that specific, the name of the class it's in to define what that is. So I'm going to call this MG storage. Yeah, I think that's what we want to do. Let me get rid of these guys. Fix up that stuff. That was coming for that MG. Yeah, where was it again? Now I'm kind of working on fixing something else at the same time, but kind of necessary. We'll leave this. I hate having MG asset open, MG asset read. It's like it already has the word asset in it. We can just do open read, C, close, but it is what it is. But this needs to be back. And I think the idea of how hello, we have subrad impunjunder, I don't know, 4204 would work, thank you. And Demetrius Lewis, hope you had an amazing holiday season so far. Yes, it's been great. You know, the holidays are a mixed bag sometimes, good and bad. So yeah, so yeah, I think this is the right way to go with this. I think the idea was originally that I think Dean wrote the Asset API at first because he needed it for another project. And he's like, we'll just have just MG as a general thing. We'll store everything underneath it, which that sounds nice, but it ends up being this, where everything's in one header file with everything in it. You know, and I think you kind of want the separation and the division, and maybe we come up with another way to attribute it to separate it out and clean up the API. I think it's better if they're separated. You know, we just have to come up with good naming conventions that, you know, don't cause any problems. So yeah, I think that's there. That's going to work, but it's going to break some stuff. Doesn't like that. Yeah, that's annoying. Yeah, that's a problem. I wonder what the right way to fix that is. Don't like it. I'm going to leave this under this for right now, even though it's not ideal. That goes to MG. All right, that's successfully built. So now I should be able to run the generator. See that 5, it'll run the generator. And then I should have an MG storage header file that has my API in it. You know, Harry and I in the internal team kind of looked at this, and we went back and forth on how to do this. We kind of we landed on this is the right way to do it. Have the C# file side define an API, have a generator that generates a header file, then you implement the header file in order to get functionality. Versus the other way around, where you have a header file, you have C++ code that defines a header file, then you try to read the header file and generate C# code to call it. This seemed like a cleaner approach to it, and I think it is. So with that, we now have a header. We're going to ignore the fact that this thing is kind of broken, and we're just going to fix our other stuff. So we'll steal this file real quick. And we're going to do MG storage. Add this guy in. And to add that guy in, what we did in the past, this will be for both desktop VK and the other. They'll be shared. I have a helper here that runs Premake. Premake is a tool that generates a native library from a script. So I kind of have a helper there that does that. It'll update the projects, and it will add these missing elements in. So it should add my MG storage in there. We'll start fixing this storage. We'll define our. Actually, it's not storage, it's storage container, right? Yes. So that's the only API we really have here. For now, it's not going to hold on to anything. And let's go get our headers, our implementations. Some implementation for now. Just need enough of this so that things fire up and we can go from there. All right, so we have implementation there too. And it should build for this and that. Come on, there we go. So built that. Let's build desktop VK because I think that's where we're running our unit test anyways. Is desktop VK. So I think that's, yeah, it's the desktop VK tests. So with that in place, I should be able to set a breakpoint here. Let's just set a breakpoint on all of them. I like to set breakpoints and verify that things are doing what I expect them to do. And now it should call this. So I go to my unit tests, come back to this test that was started. So I'm going to debug that test. Calls empty storage. There's our native API got called, right? And then open container is going to return null. Signs null there. It's going to fail at some point because it's like this thing is null. Yeah, container's null, so it can't get container name because it's container name. Oh, where is it? Weird. Well, is container name. Yeah, this is not set to anything useful. I mean, I guess I wonder why that is actually failing. Oh, because it's asserting it's a very specific thing. It's looking for the name to be related to this, right? Because there's no container name because it didn't create it. So yeah, so we need to start cleaning this up a little bit. So let's start there. I guess we'll evolve this a little at a time here. It says, hey, open this container, and then there. Container name is just a it doesn't guarantee that internally it's called anything like that. And internally we might use it for something, but we don't need to call it back and forth. So we're just going to fix this to take the handle. It's also going to take a name. Actually, I like changing it around. Name, and there's a container. Name and container. Come on. Container. And then I'm also going to store it. It's just there for the, oh, I didn't need to do that. That's just there to make it happy. So let's debug this guy again. So we got past that. It's like looking to see the containers device and the storage device are equal. So we didn't sign that. So again, unit test here is helping us tell us what we're missing here. Wrong one. There we go. Yeah, probably better do that. So device name that, so we can store. Let's do that. So that'll be better. Okay, so it's now like using something for real here. It's saying, hey, get the total space. It shouldn't be 0. I mean, this is kind of a weird unit test. Like total space could totally be 0 in theory. I mean, it doesn't have to not be 0. I mean, that's probably more accurate. You don't want it to be negative, whatever it is. But that should now just run, I think. One very simple test running. Okay, so that's failing. This is going to take a bit before we get this one working. Let's not focus on that one. Nope, that's a question. Charlie Singh, Sai Singh, maybe? I don't know. Hi, who are you? I just saw this in my feed. Where you do it? So on the bottom of the screen there, we're working on a save API for MonoGame. MonoGame is a C# library used to make games like Stardew Valley, games like Axiom Verge, games like Celeste, Towerfall, a bunch of other things that I'm not thinking of right now, like these games on the MonoGame site. You can kind of see your games that have been made in MonoGame, which is a kind of a, and no, it's not Java. It's C#, not Java. Blockscape is really cool. Here's a new one. I haven't seen that one before. Brave Escape. Not seen that before. That's pretty cool. We're always trying to add to this list of games that have been made there. This is like a very small list of titles that happen to be made in MonoGame. There are definitely a lot more. But yeah, that's what we're working on. So yeah, we need to get to the nitty gritty here now. Now we have some boilerplate out of the way. Just run all the tests real quick. Most of them are going to be broken. So yeah, so we need to get to actually doing something with this now. Like it needs to do more than what it's doing. I think the first thing that we had was that we wanted, so this one. Okay, so create, I guess he's using the name of the function to document what's happening there, which is not uncommon for, you saw public and void, so you thought Java. But I am doing this. Yes, I'm doing this. And yeah, I mean, public void, yeah, it does look Java-ish, but it's C#. So this container, open container, test file, content, create file, gets a stream writer, writes to it. I mean, this is where yeah, so the first thing is one question is, should file exist? Should that work at this point or should it work once you commit the save data? It probably should still work at this point because as far as it's concerned, it exists, just in memory. It hasn't been committed to disk yet. Now, if you throw away the container, then call file exists again, it shouldn't exist because it never got committed to disk. But in this case, that should return true. It does exist because it should be at least committed in memory. And even opening it should work because it's still committed in memory. But at the end of this, it never actually wrote it. It's pronounced Saw Hill. Ah, yes, I can see that now. Sorry. That makes sense. All right. So with that, file should exist. Right. So why doesn't this test run? Let's see. File open. Okay, so let's start with this guy. Seems like a right one. Meant, why are you doing what you're doing? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Well, the MonoGame API has not had a save API in a long time. We kind of left saving your data for save games kind of up to the user for a long time. And this was because when we first, a long time ago, we kind of dropped the API that was there under XNA because it didn't kind of fit the model that we had on mobile and consoles very well. So we kind of dropped and said, like, well, each platform has their own approach to saving, so we just need to deal with it on a platform by platform basis. And that was a mistake. We should have really at that point saying, like, we should have done at that point should have been, we should have taken the API that we had and evolved it to support what would work properly across all our platforms instead of assuming that it had to stay the same. And that's what we're doing now. We're kind of resuscitating the old API. We're changing it so that it works for our current platforms and future platforms and gives everybody that uses MonoGame kind of a standard approach for saving data that works everywhere. And you don't have to worry about it at that point. You write it one time, it just works. Just like input, you write your input code, it just works. You write your graphics code, it should just work. You write your audio code, it should just work. Same thing. So that's what we're writing. We're writing this API so that people can have an easier time of writing their games. So that I need to solve that at some point here, but I'm not going to worry about that for right now. So this is where it fails. Maybe that is what it fails. Okay, that isn't where it fails. Writes the data. So now we have this container has that in memory, and then file exists is where it fails, I think. No, that seems to turn true, so that's getting there. Is it this? It might be here where it opens the file. So it got it. Oh, it didn't like that. What is that? Oh, I think I know why, maybe. I think what happened here, so that the data stream is bad. And I think it's because when you leave the writer, it destroyed the stream. Yeah, I think there's a thing that you can do here. Is it on the writer? I thought there was something that tells you not to flush the stream with the writer, I thought. Maybe it's not that. Yeah, I might have to actually do this a little differently. I can't, because people are going to write code like this. They're going to write code like this, which when this thing, since people are going to write code like this, and this is totally valid, it kills that stream. I can't write it that way. I thought, oh, this is a simple way of doing this. Just do this, problem solved. But really the right thing to do is I really need to keep a buffer here of the data so that when memory stream is flushed, that the data is updated on that structure. So I really do need like an intermediary type here that handles that. Sahil Singh, let's see, I have a question. I recently got a job for a service base. Okay. A general life question. I mean, with job, so off topic, but we'll cover it real quick. So with tech jobs and stuff like that, you got to start somewhere. But my advice for tech is, take a job that's at least in the vein of what you want to do, even if it's not the greatest pay for right now, and work there, work hard, learn things, do a little bit, try to go as far as you can with it. But, within a year or two, you should be looking to upgrade your job. Just like PCs, you should be looking to upgrade your job. So within a year or two, you should be looking for either promotion within that company that is significant, that gives you a pay raise, give you a responsibility bump, or, and really at the same time, you should be looking outside the company for a better job. And if someone offers you a better job, come back to your boss and say, hey, I have this better offer. Will you match it? If they won't, that's fine. Go somewhere else. The most important thing that I never did, which I should have done, but I never did, is you really should be looking to move jobs every 2 to 3 years, if they're not offering you more money and more advancement there, because your experience is valuable. And every time you go to a new place, they feel obligated to pay you at least more than the last job that you had. So if you want to bump up your pay every 2 to 3 years, you should be looking for something better, and not, because there's no value. Honestly, there's no value anymore in sticking with the same company for the rest of your life. That's rarely rewarded. And, at the end of your 30 or 40 or 60 years working somewhere, you're lucky if you get a cake and, have a good life. So I wouldn't stick somewhere for long periods of time. Back to topic. So, what's going to be the easiest way to do this? I guess I'm going to have to, is there a simple way to do this? Like, what I want is, I'd love to kind of reuse the memory stream and not just throw them away, but at the same time, when it closes, it wants to destroy the memory stream. I guess I could, memory stream I could change the implementation so that when it does call dispose, that it doesn't actually dispose. Maybe. I don't know what the side effects of that are. Let's see. Yeah, I wonder what the better approach here is. I don't want to spend too much time messing with it. But in essence, what it's doing is it's disposing of the stream when I don't want it to. And while you can fix that from the outside, you can't fix that from here, because I believe when you create the stream, you can tell it, or we create the stream writer, you can tell it whether it owns the stream or not. I think how that works is, it's really annoying. I think it's in stream options. Yeah, in stream options, I believe it can tell you stuff like that. No, disassembly, code definition. Yeah, this delete on close. Wait, no, it's not delete on close. It's not the right one. Anyways, it's something like that. There's a way to tell it, hey, don't destroy this stream when it closes, but we can't control that from the outside. If people do this, that's perfectly fine. So really, we need to pass a stream that, won't be destroyed like that. And I think how I would do it would be I would make our own stream class, or on memory stream class. Where's our stuff here? So using memory stream, we're going to have our little helper stream here. You can put it inside of this guy. Nope. Override. And we're just not going to dispose. And this guy's going to hold on to a storage stream. I'm going to stop debugging here because that's not useful. And that's going to return a storage stream. No, I need to have one that takes a byte array. No, come on. Fingers don't fail me now. There we go. Is that going to do it? I might still have one that doesn't work right. We'll see. Oh, it's because we don't have a default constructor. I don't think I actually have to do that, but, for thoroughness. Nope, I don't need to do you either. I hit the wrong button. That's annoying. I just need to debug that. Sahil Singh. All right, have a good day. Bye. Oh, this is the wrong thing. That needs to be storage stream as well. Let's debug that. And I think all this code is going to end up being moved, but I'm living with it for right now. So there's the destroy that's happening here when it gets out of there, saying, hey, dispose this thing, but we're not going to dispose of this thing. So now when it does this, it won't fail because it's still open. So it says, hey, set the position, which is at 16 at the moment, back to 0. And now this thing should be able to read from it. Read content, hello MonoGame, or equals read content, yes. Everybody's happy. Go away. It tries to dispose again. And here, it should be trying to dispose the container. Do I have a... Where is it? Could be in here. Yeah. So this is the cleanup of the container that needs to happen. Eduardo Rodriguez. Hello, Tom. Are you working to add an API to facilitate the inclusion of the same function on the games? Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing, Eduardo. Trying to evolve the old XNA API for this into something a little bit more useful for our needs. So this gets back to, yeah, so what we have, so this is the dispose call, which is supposed to do the flushing. I mean, I don't need to worry about the flushing just right now, but I'm tempted to move all the stuff that I have in safe storage container native up to this level. Because it is going to be the stuff that we share is really needs to be in storage container. And then each platform can implement different stuff. Like this kind of had the shared stuff, but I think it also had some platform specific calls in here as well. Had like its own implementation for this. I think lifting all this stuff up here might be the right thing to do potentially. Yeah. Yeah, so that might be the right thing to do. You know, it's not, I mean, this unit test now runs. Some other ones might run too, maybe. So that case doesn't work. I'm tempted just to continue to make this API part of it work fine so that I can then step back and then transplant everything after. Yeah, you know what this should do here is decide the deleted flag was important here, but you know, we can also do if it's I think memory stream doesn't have to be I think memory stream doesn't need to be disposed. Yeah, memory stream doesn't yeah, memory stream doesn't have to be disposed, so I don't have to worry about not disposing and just nulling the thing. That will fix that test because it won't exist at that point, I think. No, it didn't fix the test. Interesting. I think it's because the file exists doesn't handle the case. Yeah. I mean, the is deleted is necessary. This thing needs to stay around because it needs to know later that this file was deleted and to not keep it. File exists, false is directory, and false is deleted. That'll fix that. That should fix that case. Get file names. So pattern matching, that's going to be broken at the moment. We need to fix that case. Saying it's assuming that you can create a file without writing anything to it. I guess in theory that makes sense. You didn't write anything to the stream, but you technically created the file. So this should probably be acceptable behavior. Let's see. So Zolkage Delamem meme. Funny names. So this will be built into MonoGame framework. I guess that'd be one less thing to recode per project. Yes, that's the idea. Is that the old XNA API had this as well. You can see kind of the basic structure of it. You create a, let's see, where is it? They create a storage device. You open the container, which can be named whatever you want. In this case, they're naming it by the name of the game. And then you can call create file, write to the data, and you're done. It's wrote your save data. And the same with opening it, you can just call open file, read the data, you're done. So it's a very simple way to do it. And you don't have to worry about details about where do I store it. It should work across all platforms. That's the idea, is what we're trying to provide here. So this, so the problem with this one was basically that it doesn't know how to pattern match. So if I debug this one, the file should exist. But when it gets here, it can't get any files. I mean, it can get files, but there's no pattern matching here. So here it has a file. We should probably keep the name of the file in there so we always have it, but it's alpha text. But it does, we have a search pattern, but we don't know what to do to it. And then here it's returning that case, but it's also returning this case and that case. Let me remember how to do that. There was, quick search through ChatGPT to see if they can point me in the right direction of this stuff. I'll use ChatGPT a lot for things like this. I just don't use Google to search anymore because Google's so bad at doing it. So I don't use Google for search anymore. I use ChatGPT to search information because it's the only way that I can get. At least ChatGPT is not trying to sell me an ad in the middle of my search or try to point me at crazy websites, which is what Google does now. Their built-in AI is a little bit better, but I just don't trust them. They've kind of lost my trust. They went from do no evil to how many ads can we possibly sell you? And yeah, that makes me unhappy with it. But I feel like ChatGPT is at least good for cutting through the bullshit, trying to get you to an answer of something. I don't trust their code necessarily, but I trust that they're finding information for me appropriately. Because that's really what it is. LLM is just cross-referencing lots of information. It can't really invent anything new, but it can at least reference you to something useful. I don't even really trust it for code generation. It's not correct all the time. No basic thing. So I really probably just do need a regex of some sort that can do it potentially. File system globbing. Never heard of that before. That seems like something that may or may not work on certain platforms. I mean, maybe it works everywhere, but it's under the extension thing. I wouldn't want to do that. So it was suggesting replacing star with dot star as a way to generate a regex, which could be possible, is a good way to do that. Let's try something simple like that and see if we can get something that works. I'll have to build an actual regex later. Let's see. So how does that work? I need to build a string is what I need. Yeah. So I need to take the pattern and I'm going to replace star with what is it? Is it dot? Yeah, dot. Well, it's not just dot. It's with dot star because that's what makes it wildcard. So I'm just going to do that outside here. Let's have a very lame approach to this right now. Probably don't want it to be case sensitive. And it probably should also be a single line, I think. Oh, single line. I hate really long lines like this. Let's break that up. This should work for this very basic pattern. So what we do is the opposite. If it's not a match, then continue. Otherwise, go for it. So let's stop this, run this again. Kind of try to get all these APIs basically working, and then I'm going to start working on the low-level code that actually commits and reads stuff from disk. So replace that with dot star, which should produce a match for alpha. Yeah, so this key, which is alpha, matched, but this one should fail. Oh, wait. Why did it succeed? Oh, wait, it needs the matched at the start, doesn't it? What is that in regex? Another site that I use a lot for regex stuff is, where is that guy? I think Storm works pretty good. This one will work pretty good for where it needs, and I go to the reference and it'll remind me of what I've forgotten. Matches the beginning of the input. Okay, so I need to put that at the beginning of the pattern matcher. So let's stop that. Change that to this. I'm using this more often too, the stringizer stuff. I just find it more convenient than say, no, that's already doing what it needs to do. I like doing this versus like plus. It's kind of lame. Feels like Visual Basic. I guess using pluses and stuff like that, it feels like it's 1 + 1, you know, or 1, you know, it's x equals x + 1. It feels like that whenever I do that, so I try to avoid that. And at least then it knows it's going to build one giant string. So now that pattern is that. That should match, and the next one should not. So at least the star case is handled. You know, with wildcards, I think there's some other cases to handle, like if we have multiple stars and things like that, we might have to escape certain things. Oh, that actually had a useful piece of information. If you pre-escape the pattern, we'll check this. It might not be right in that information. That thing. Come on, there we go. Debug. I'm not sure if that escape, like if it handles inner periods and things like that, it might. Just want to see what it does with that. Oh, it escapes it like that. I see what it does. Yeah, and I can see how that's useful because it could, yeah, that might be useful. Yeah, because it'll pre-escape it in a way that it can work. So yeah, it's a useful tidbit from ChatGPT that regex escape can pre-set up your string so that nothing matches a regex pattern to begin with, and then it'll replace that with what I need, which is that, and it gets exactly what I need here. Here, skip. I mean, the test could have been easier here, but whatever. Okay, so that works now. Let's run this again. Yeah, so this is the one that's like, hey, wait for safe syncing to complete so we can verify that it's done. And this actually came into another question here, like the container. So is dispose the right way to say the container was completely successfully written to or not? And I think the question is like, how do you discard? You know, how you say, hey, ignore this. Because it could have failed to write and thrown an exception. When you throw an exception, it's going to call dispose on, you know, this is not using a using. That's kind of a problem. It's not using a using, but, you know, it should have, if there's an exception here, it shouldn't write that to disk. So it shouldn't be trying to flush to disk in those cases. It should definitely not do that. So there was the idea of like, do we want to have like a specific function that flushes it to disk, or, you know, or sometimes it's called commit. And if you don't call commit, it does nothing. The problem with that is if most users wouldn't understand that, and they might come in here and do this, and they would get done writing and they're like, hey, it never writes my save data. It's because they don't know they have to call commit at the end of that. So we were debating whether adding that to the API makes sense to flush it, or if it should auto flush, you know, in that case. The problem is that it doesn't handle exceptions well. It will write a partial save data. So maybe it needs to make it apparent, you know, and disposal should not indicate successful writing. But you really should have a flush of some sort. And I think we called it save data, but, you know, commit might be the right thing. That tells it, hey, write this to disk. Because otherwise, you know, how do you control whether it actually wrote it or not? You know, because once you do this, it's really not written to disk yet. So commit would be the right way to make it actually flush to disk. It also means you can call commit several times. Disposal does nothing more. You know, it also means these unit tests never write anything to disk. They just write to memory. You know, because you never really committed anything. I think commit's the right part of the API there, and that's what it should be. I think it's what we have to have. Otherwise, you're going to have, you don't know, like, if you like this, that's a bad test. But let's say like this one up here, like if you wanted this to actually work, you would want to do that before it finishes, right? So you do all your writing and then you call commit. That ensures at that point, hey, commit all this data. So before it leaves here, it's committed. And if any of this code up here throws an exception, including like your code for writing your save data might be very complicated. If that throws an exception, instead of writing a partial file to disk, it disappears and it didn't overwrite any data. Yes, you lost that save data, but you can handle the exception and present an error and let them resave, right? Instead of it writing a partial file to disk and dying. I've seen a lot of people write crazy code to make sure that save data isn't partially written. The real thing that you have to do is have something like this where commit is the thing that ensures it writes it all at one time and it's done, and not try to, I've seen a lot of things that try to do a lot of shuffling of like, let me move this to I'm going to write into a temp file. Then once I write it into the temp file, then I'm going to rename the old file to something else. Then I'm going to rename the new file to the old file. Then I'm going to delete the old file. Like a lot of hoops to try to make something work. And the truth is you really just kind of need to do this. You need to have it commit at a certain point. That said, there are other cases for when you want to do that juggling of files. In particular, you want to do it when you're tight on disk space, because it might fail to write the disk because it can't write, it's out of disk space, and you don't want it to overwrite the file that worked in that case. So there are specific cases, but I think we're going to handle all that nonsense will be handled under the hood. Commit will take care of making sure that works properly for your stuff, and you don't have to handle it. You just have to let me just write my file to disk and we're good. So let's see what else. Let me check our time here. Make sure I'm not falling behind on things and that fires have not broken out. There were some fires to deal with. Let's see. Container test file. All right, so we're going to assume we're going to have this later. Actually, let's just put it in there now. We just have it do nothing at the moment. Come on. I'm going to call platform commit. That's all it really needs to do. And then we'll add our platform commit at a low level. Actually, it probably doesn't need to call. Actually, it doesn't need a platform commit. Not how we're going to write it. This will be handled here. For now, at least that works and it makes it look a little nicer. We really don't need to call that here though, because for our testing purposes, we don't need it to actually write to disk. It's just testing the memory. We're not testing commit. Commit will be a special test on its own. All right, so we're closer here. Let's get a couple more things written. I want to write a couple more, fix a couple more of these tests. And then once I fix a couple more of these tests and we get it all green here, then we're going to step back and lift all the code that I've written into the higher level class to get that in place. And then finally start implementing the native side, which is the part that actually reads and writes, actually does the reading and writing to disk. And there'll be some more stuff to do, but that's part of it. So let's look at this guy. My guess is it's probably something very simple that does not work here. Probably just the directory exists, probably, right? Very simple thing. Yep, same thing as this. Funny, it's the same API. So that'll fix that, and maybe the other one. All right, get directory names, open container. Yep, so this one is failing. That's another one that needs fixes for wildcards. I think we can do the exact same thing, which does bring up the pattern, the idea that we might want to have our own, share the pattern matcher. It's the best. Let's not do that yet. Let's get it working, then we'll worry about sharing stuff. See, probably the right thing. Yeah, the right thing here to do is like bake a regex that's precompiled that does the work, so we don't have this. But yeah, but we don't have to do that just yet. I suspect that if I just do this, it'll work. Nope. I was wrong. Oh, there's no pattern matching in this one, so that's not why it's failing. Oh, it's because it ends with the slash, and it doesn't expect that. So, and we specifically made it so that directories always ended in // so that it's very apparent it was a directory and it's not something else. So yeah, so we want to peel that off when we get back directories. So since we know they always end in /, we just do what's the right thing? Substring the right thing. Guess that's what we want to do. Yeah, it's kind of a little bit lame. What I'll do actually. Got another chatter. Hello, just wanted to let you know MonoGame was using my class to learn C#. We had a whole half-year-long project to create games in it. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, we've thanks for that post. Shreneverka, I can't say your name. I can't tell where one word ends and the next one begins. Thanks for being a big fan of it, by the way. So yeah, that's great to know. We're trying to make bigger pushes back into education. For a while, XNA was used in education for a while back in the day. And we've had some schools teach using MonoGame as a teaching tool in the past. We were trying to make a new push towards that. You know, we've kind of let those things lapse over the years. Just people have been busy, and we haven't had a lot of coordination on the MonoGame team for the last couple of years. But you know, now that we've started the new foundation and we've gotten donations from individuals and studios, it's helped us a lot. And we've been able to make some more concerted efforts in these directions. And one of them is, yes, we want to definitely push more into schools because we think it's important to learn coding. Like that's the thing that I feel is, important to us is we want people to learn how to code and how to think logically. And I think that helps you throughout life, but especially in game development, it helps you to understand how code works. And a lot of things and a lot of tools today, in Unity and Unreal Engine, there is a lot of not having the code. There's a lot of dragging little boxes around and connecting wires. There's a lot of dropping, models into your scene and just very basic, it's a lot more drag and drop interface and a lot less kind of coding approach to things. Even though you do write code in both those engines, they try to remove a lot of code, which is fine. But I think that having something that is code first, I think is important. It does two things. It's important. One, you have to know exactly how your code works, and what you're trying to achieve. And I think a lot of times people get confused because they're trying to just build things with drag and drop and kind of poke at it, try to figure out how it may work. And I think you really want to have if you want to have a design that's unique and stands out in a game, I think you have to kind of write it yourself. Or write a lot of that code yourself. And we want to make it where it's easy for people to not have to worry about the platform, which is, I think, the important part of an engine is not having to worry about the platform. It should give you a leg up on certain things, and we do, but you shouldn't have to worry about the platform, and you should really know your code, and you really need to understand how code works. And I think that nowadays people are not understanding how code works, and I think that's hurt. It hurts your education and your experience not to know how code works. Like, I learned just writing code in BASIC back in the late 80s, or late 80s, mid 80s. So yeah, I think that's really important that you learn that stuff. So Delameme, facts, zero code is a trap. Your only learning can be dependent on a tool. Yeah, exactly. And with Unity costing, upwards to a couple $100 a month for you to have a professional Unity license, they really want you dependent on a tool. And, MonoGame is 100% free to use on every platform. We don't charge anything. We're just trying to accept donations to help us move the framework forward and to keep it alive as an open source tool. All right, so I'm going to keep the file name in here. This came up before when we did this. And to make sure I do it, I'm going to fix this thing to have a constructor that takes the file name, so that there's no way that I skip providing a file name. I was about to write this like I would write I'm going to make this read only, so that it's basically just a one time you set it, you're good. Let's see, public. By doing this, now everywhere that uses this will fail. And I build. So now I have to deal with this everywhere. Oh, I need a normalized file name too. Well, I don't need that. I just need one that doesn't have the pathing. That's okay. That one is fine. It's normalized, but that's okay. I mean, that's fine for this purpose. Here is just where we want to be careful that we use the directory name without the slash as the name here, so we can return it without any problems. Mark this out file. Still normalized, but gets rid of that. And then that means that when we return our, where was it? Get directory names, instead of returning that, it can just do pure value file name as the name of it. Technically, this could do the same thing. All right, so that should run now. We're slowly building towards an API that works. That one should work now too. So it just leaves this one guy that probably is not going to work because it does some creates a second storage device and then tries to access it, which is valid. It's just not going to because it never actually committed it to disk. And the one thing that this does that's kind of a tricky test here, I mean, maybe it's not tricky, but it's creating these files on disk, but it doesn't know for sure, was this file written as part of this work here, or was it already on disk and something's broken? needs to write something here that's unique every time so that it knows that it wrote it properly. Otherwise, and you don't want it to just write a million files over time. So yeah, this test needs to be rewritten a little bit, so that it can tell it actually does it. I mean, it really needs to be able to destroy the existing container if it exists first, probably. Yeah, this is probably not a bad idea to do this first. Which I don't know if we even have a test for that at the moment. So that should, assuming that delete container actually works, right? And that's a whole other, thing to worry about. This won't work because it doesn't know to do this. The container commit does nothing. So it's not going to work. But I think we have most of our API in place that we want. I think we just need to lift all this up into the higher level code in order to make this better. So let's start doing that, because that's the right thing to do here, I think. So this is going to stay the same. I don't know what that's doing there. Yeah, I don't like that we link those docs. Like, we should write our own docs for this. We shouldn't do that. We're not going to keep any of this stuff. We're not going to support multiple threads reading your containers. We don't need that. We're going to really tear apart this class. We're going to basically lift everything that's in here back up, because this stuff should be the same on everything. So so actually, let's start beginning here. It'll be easier. This part is not going to be in there. That's going to stay as private. This and this is going to become part of the API, or the public part of it, and that. So we're going to move that up in here. Come on, thing. There we go. I don't think we really need player index, but we're leaving it for right now. I mean, we do, what player index is for is the old way that it would work. Like, if we were on PC in particular, it's like, well, how do you, because PC doesn't have a concept of a assigned in user, with their save storage other than the local player. And a lot of people playing PC games might just have their, a friend might play it, but they don't have a different login. So the idea was that you would have a different, save storage based on the player index, which is just the controller index. So there'd be player index 0 and 1 and 2 and 3, which I guess sort of kind of works, but it's really a convoluted system. We'll see about that. So, all right, so this stuff exists here. Directory file content is disposed is fine. Container name, it doesn't really need to. I don't see a reason that we need to have it as a separate thing. Storage device. I always wonder about, like, why not just use the auto properties with these things. I don't see that there's any benefit to. I don't see there's any benefit having these intermediates. I mean, I guess the benefit is that it does say that it's read-only, So there is some benefit to that, maybe. I thought there was a way you can do that with a getter. Make it a read-only getter. Is that true? Yeah, I think there's a way to do that. This is what ChatGPT is good for, is just answering some questions. Instead of reading a bunch of docs, like, hey, here's how it works, much more helpful. Aha, init. That's what the trick is. I could have been looking at docs for a while for that, or I could have just gotten an answer. That's really what the future of this stuff is that kind of thing. Is that right? Oh, I don't have a colon. Wait, what? 2 plus 9, is that not covered in this? We'll look at that as an optimization later. I'm just trying to get this thing cleaned up here. It doesn't need this. I'm going to move some of our the construction will happen at the in the platform specific code, because that code's going to define how construction works. So we can start here. Platform create directory can go to just do this. These are internals, and they can go into here as internal helpers. Just one by one, I'm going to move this guys to higher level API. This will leave us with the original file name if we want it for whatever reason. That no longer has to do that. Just lift all this stuff out. Delete directory. This brings up a question like, should it tell you whether it existed or not? That's a big maybe. We'll see about that. File. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Another question of, should it tell you it did do it or it didn't? To me, I think these things telling you whether it did it or not is probably useful, but maybe it might not. It just adds to the API, makes things more complex. You probably don't want a feedback loop. Like if you want to know whether it deleted the file, you should check if it existed first. If you don't care, just don't bother. Let's see, back back to this, or actually back to this. Directory exists. Looks like these were done in a backwards pattern of some sort. What's next? File exists. Do we have file exists next? Yes, it is. Next, get directory names. So there's two, one with a search pattern, one without. I'll just make this one do the actual work. It just drops in there and it works. You see, that shouldn't matter in this API. You know, like there's no reason that if you pass null here, it should freak out. Like, oh no, you passed null for the pattern. I mean, you could say that, I mean, if we wanted this to work for both and have an assertion in this case, I guess you could say that if someone called search with a pattern that was invalid, that you might want to alert them that they had an invalid pattern. Null being an invalid pattern, they could have gotten it from something else, and it might be valid for it to say, "Hey, it freaked out. Pattern was wrong." Even though it's a very narrow case, null or not. If we wanted to do that here and not remove that test, what you'd want to do is a you know, is it inner or like something like that, right? Then you have a private, basically you have this that does the work, but it's private. You can call internal get directory names, and it can just do what it does. It's shared, and then this one can have its assert. Nobody's unhappy for that. I probably broke this other one, probably. Oh, that's never, because we haven't gotten to that one yet, I guess. Get file names, that doing this. Yeah, we said that basically that's not going to work, so we're going to do yeah, it's going to do this basically. So we're going to get this guy. We'll share that thing later. This is our platform open file. I think we might have to have that same pattern here with this guy, because it has like a lot of variations. Even though I think all these variations are dumb, it has a lot of variations. And actually, this is the one. Why does it have unsafe here? Oh, because it does this. And this it probably should not do, at least not like that. This part is fine. It's this one that's like, hey, actually fetch it. You know, if it's null, call the file API and return some data. That's a case that has to go into native code or to platform-specific bits. So this is where we need to change some of the API, but we'll get to that in a second. I mean, I technically don't have to do this. I could just do this guy. But no, I want to do that because I want to keep this internal to here and the unsafe part separate from this part. Just because we don't want to show the public API as being unsafe for any reason, even though this will actually not be unsafe eventually. Yeah, and in fact, it doesn't even have to be unsafe like that. Brazil. Hello, Brazil. Because you can do this. And then it doesn't need to be unsafe. So let's do that, not this other thing. Commit will have to do some work at some point, but it doesn't right now. Dispose should not do what it's doing. This whole dispose callback here. It's a lot of infrastructure for something that's not important to this class anymore. Dispose is not like the key portion of making this thing work. Yeah, I want to really clean this thing up. We'll get to that eventually. For now, we don't need to break it. Let's get container data. Don't know anything. That's internal stuff that Dom had written previously. I'm going to skip that. This is part of the code that we'll have to write to a certain extent, but it's going to be different. So we're just going to keep trucking with this. Sorry, I am kind of like throwing away a lot of Dom's code, or not a lot. I'm throwing away all his code. I'm sorry. I am, but I'm just trying to get it straight in my head and get it somewhere. I mean, we're keeping some of the ideas that are here, and it's basically the same ideas, but you know, like this has a bunch of writing some. I mean, this is a concept of like we're going to write a single file for all the file data, which I don't know if that's necessarily the right thing to do. There is a need for doing that in certain cases. Like we've had some games we've worked in the past, and I'm not going to name names, but some games we've worked in the past have had a very badly designed save data where they would write tons of little files, you know, like a ton of small files. And the problem is like files take up a fixed amount of space, especially in certain save systems. And a small file might take up as big a space as a big file. And it would cause problems with their save data. It was also very noisy. Like instead of just opening a save file, reading it all in and handling it, it would like open and close and open and close and open and close lots of little files at different random times. It was not very efficient. And we might want to hide some of that from you by kind of under the hood batching together files that are more complicated. That said, whenever you do that, it's not very helpful for like modding, right? For modders, you want to keep on PC, you want to kind of keep your save data as flexible as possible so that they can easily access things that you don't want them to be able to access. You know, I'm just realizing now I have no music on the entire time. That sucks. Oh, the thing I was thinking about when I first started, I forgot. But we're almost at the end of the stream here for today. So we probably will end up having something like this, but not quite like this, I don't think. And it's probably going to be, it might be platform specific. And it might be something that you have to opt in for, is having it like, telling it like, hey, when you write to this container, I want this container to store things in a single blob, you know, and not as individual files. Because individual files can be kind of noisy, but I'm going to start with individual files, and I'm probably going to come back to something similar to this, some sort of file format here. And I can always get this out of history. So for now, I'm not going to worry about this. I'll get it out of history once we get to that point. Read container, don't need that right now. So this gets us back to where we were at, I think. And then if I go to native, this has to still be here. Yeah. So this might all actually build still, I think. Oh, I went full screen. Let's see if they actually, oh, crap. Yeah, we don't need to worry for that. Like this idea is like, well, we're going to tell it to flush the disk, and then we're going to wait till it's done. It's like how I usually like to design these things is I don't like internal I don't like things to internally be async, as much as making it the responsibility of the coder to deal with it. Like if you like having this block until it gets done saving, I think that's the better design here, because that lets somebody from the outside do whatever they want to do instead of having to. The outside person knows this is what it does. You can thread it however you like, or not at all. But if you do it this other way, then then it requires the user to know, like, hey, I need to check to see if it's still processing. If it is still processing, I don't want to bother it. And I just don't like that idea of internalizing that. Like, if you want this to be threaded, I mean, we could internalize it fully and not even have. I guess we could leave that, but it's not something you're required to verify. I mean, there's something nice about just saying, hey, when I hit commit, when I exit this function, it is done. It's committed stuff to disk. I don't have to worry that it's not committed stuff to disk. If you think of on a per platform basis, some platforms, we told it to commit to disk, but it might not have because of how those platforms work. So there's always some asynchronous kind of processing, but for now, let's not worry about this just yet. I'm trying to simplify things while we're thinking about it. Those are the only two things that were problematic here. Then all my tests should run again. Yep, all my tests run. I've lifted the code successfully from over there to here. We just now need to deal with some actual platform specific stuff. Like here, when we go this, it says, hey, actually get the data. This is where it's like, hey, actually, I want to load this file data. So here might be where we want to do like, I guess, platform file load probably. And it doesn't have to be unsafe itself. It just calls that and says, hey, load this data. And then the platform has to deal with it. I forgot what it needs to do here. It's passed in a file name. And then for native code, for things using the native API, it will call storage file load to take care of getting the data. For things that, like on our platforms that don't use the native API, they can implement this however they like. It's up to their implementation, how they do it. And that's how we've separated this out. So let me run this again, make sure it still runs. It does. We can do a couple things that are probably the right thing to do here. Actually, we need dispose to do platform dispose. I hate all this. I hate this. This is kind of like, I look at this and I kind of look like preschool level coding. It's like lots of nested ifs. It's like, that's gross. If it's disposed, return. We don't need to do anything. If it's disposing, we don't need any of this garbage. I really don't know about this thing, whether we want to keep that or not. It seems unnecessary. It's, there's not a resource tied to that really. But what we do need to do is call platform here. Let the platform code do what it needs to do, and then platform dispose here. Void do what it needs to do here, which is we need to create a container. Did we not do a close container? We did not. Open and close. It doesn't need that. It just needs the storage container itself. So we have that. That should all still run. It's actually going to run. It's probably actually going to fail because it can't get that storage container thing because I have to rerun this guy. F5. It's that. Now we have this API that exists now. Oh, our native code needs to be fixed. This is probably going to be it for today, unfortunately. I wish we could have gotten more stuff done, but you know, it's progress, just not as much as I would like. Things have gotten complicated today, and I can't commit any more time to this, really. There it is. Next time, we're going to get into actually a couple things. We're going to get into actually reading and writing from disk, like actual reading and writing. And we need to do the enumeration where it gathers all the files that are available in the storage container when it loads it so that it can effectively return real data that's on disk. Like it can actually, oh, what am I doing here? It can actually be sure that the data on disk is actually, like it reads what's on disk ahead of time to tell you this is what's available. And when you try to get data, it actually gets the data from disk, which currently it does not. It just it fails. Why does that fail now? Come on, thing. Fail. Show me why. Oh, wait, what? Oh, it's probably because sometimes it's not smart. Sometimes it's not smart. It does not build these things new. One thing. I'm having it build both of them just in case. All right, so this is closer to where we want to be, I think. Give me green. There we go. So we still have to get this unit test to work. That's not going to work until this works because that's where the problem lies. It's getting this far. If we debug it. It's getting that far, but then when it comes here, this is when it goes wrong because it doesn't have any directories. Oh wait, it does. Why does it have directories? That's really curious. Oh no, it's going through directories and looking for found directories. Yeah, found directories is 0. It's doing the opposite, you know, and that's never going to work. But yeah, that's why found directories is empty, which is what I expected. because it's the second container, it never flushed the disk. The second container can't find anything, and that'll succeed once we actually have it, do its work. So yeah, so that's basically where we're going to have to leave it at, unfortunately. So yeah, progress. So next time we should be able to fix it so that it actually reads and writes to disk. Like when it first opens a container, it needs to take the initial hit. Like when you call open container, that's when we want it to, and we want it to at least gather what's on disk. Like say, hey, at least find out what files are on disk, so that when somebody queries, or maybe it needs to be lazy, maybe. Like if you say, hey, give me a list of directory names, it's okay. If I'm going to request a list of directory names, I have to then touch disk. But if you don't call get directory names, it probably shouldn't do that. It should probably just, it shouldn't touch that at all. Because again, if you're not querying back, it doesn't have to read. And sometimes mounting and reading data can be slower than just not doing it. And I'm kind of working around how Save APIs have worked, in older consoles, but we need to handle those cases. And same thing with get file names. It doesn't need to, if it doesn't need to get the file names or get directory names, it can just write the data. Meaning that when you go there and flush, it will flush and overwrite any files that are there, create new files, replace things, and it'll work. But it's when you get into things like, hey, delete this file and delete that file and delete this directory, and and get directory names and get file names, it has to, at that point, it has to touch disk and find out what's there. Otherwise, it might not be able to work properly. But yeah, I think that this would give us a good starting point, and we'll refine this, but I think we're getting close. So yeah, so next time we're going to actually start reading and writing from disk. We have a good high-level API that tries to cache things. Reading and writing to disk is the next step, and we're going to focus on the PC, but eventually that same API will work on other platforms, just have a new implementation for each one. All right, well, as always, thanks for being here and checking this stream out. If you haven't followed us on Twitch and YouTube, it's we're always trying to expand our follower count there. Also, support MonoGame. We're an open source project. We're actually a charity. So we, your donations are tax deductible, I guess. And that support directly helps us on writing new code, maintaining the websites and the different repos that we have, paying for hosting, paying for other things. We're trying to, spend some time and get some actual competitions and stuff in the new year. Actually sponsoring some game jam type things is something that Simon's been working on for a while. As well as just pay for maintaining and expanding the framework, especially on consoles. So yeah, if you can, support us there, and have a good next year, I guess, when I see you next. Bye.